All right, back for a pretty interesting stream today. I've decided it'd be really cool to contribute to the 3D program Blender. Last time I was debating if I wanted to contribute to another GNOME program, maybe make a new libidwida program from scratch, continuing working on Emacs. But I think I decided it would actually be coolest to contribute to the 3D program Blender. And I'm going to be going in not really knowing much about it. We'll be using LLMs, Google, all kinds of techniques to kind of figure out the code base and kind of get a sense for how to contribute. I found a pretty cool patch, pretty cool body of work that needed some doing. Basically, Blender did a refactor of their Python API, and they actually accidentally removed a few API endpoints, such as that relating to annotation strokes, annotation stroke points. So I think it would be really cool to try to add this back in. It once existed, so maybe that might help me out a little bit. And overall, it'll probably be an easy way to get into the code base because it's just the Python API. It's not necessarily the hardcore 3D stuff that will be a little bit harder to get into. So we're going to go ahead and try that today. I already have the development environment all set up. For music, we will listen to Space by All India Radio. We just got this album on Bandcamp last week, I believe. So we'll go ahead and start with that. Cool. And then let's go ahead and start logging this session into Emacs, clock in. Cool. So we are now clocked in to Emacs, and we can go ahead and start. All right, so let's start with Claude. Let's do sender blender get Claude. Where is the code for the Python API? I need to add API operations for annotation strokes and annotation stroke points. Cool. Let's start with Claude figuring out the code base. Let me see if Egglot is working. That Egglot is the LSP server that Emacs uses. I don't know if I checked that before the stream. Source. Oops, don't want to check Python. Egglot was working for Python, so that part's good at least. I don't know if I see Egglot actually. Okay, Egglot might not be set up. Let me see how I can go ahead and get my compile JSON. So compile commands JSON Blender. So let's go ahead and just figure that out. Run CMake with option. Okay. Let's go ahead and try this out real quick. Let's go ahead and create a new Dix development environment. We have one for Claude, one for compilation, then we'll do one for my shell. Okay, so apparently if I do this and do a make, it should work. Let me do this. Make J16. see. Compile commands.json. Huh. I don't think it worked. Let's see what we need to do to get that up and running. Oh, you know what? Man, touchpad is not working out. Okay, so let's do this. CMake generation of Blender is not allowed in source directory. Okay, so I know for Blender we actually have a build directory right above. It's not clear to me. That division is a little unusual compared to projects I've worked on before. Okay, cool. Now it's creating. Okay, we created it fine. CD source. CD Blender. CD blend loader. Okay, interesting. Okay, cool. Claude has almost figured out the directions for us to add those annotations, so that'll help. By the way, I had to change the text scale from 150 to 125 because it was almost impossible to see a text editor and Blender at the same time. I feel like I have to show two windows at any given time, but maybe I've seen some streamers just have one big maximize window, and maybe that is the way to go. Okay, let's see. Okay. Okay, Claude has figured it out, so why don't we actually ask Claude to do the first rendition of this. Please add Python API operations for annotation strokes.new, annotation strokes dot remove stroke, annotation stroke points dot add count radius opacity, and annotation strokes stroke points dot remove index. Okay. All right. So we'll have Claude try the first draft of that. We'll see how that looks. And then we will have this up just in case. Well, once we want to see the changes Claude made using Maggot. Okay. So I haven't done much Python that you can call from C++ before. Rather, Python that calls into C++. Looks like in this case, if I'm reading this correctly, it's going to be in the actual C++ file, which I figured might be something like that. So that'll be interesting to see how it converts that into, it makes that accessible via API. So far, I'm liking this album. I haven't actually listened to much all India radio before, but it's pretty good. I think they're supposed to be like pretty Pink Floyd inspired, and I always really liked Pink Floyd. Especially their early stuff. If you ever heard some of that, it's very different actually than kind of the, I don't know, space rock, psychedelic stuff later. Yes, let's allow Claude to make edits. All right, it's quite a big edit. It's doing a lot of initialization of the stroke, like the thickness, the fill opacity. I'm really wondering if that's how, that seems like a little bit much on Claude's part. I don't think we're going to want to instantiate with that much. Oh man, this is a lot of stuff it's adding. I'm not convinced this is all correct. Interesting that the functions have a suffix rather than a prefix of API. I think before we start critiquing Claude too much, we'll at least see if it compiles. And if it compiles, then at least we'll know we're on to something. Okay, Claude didn't get the... Okay, cool. Write a sample.py file I can load in Blender to test this feature out. Honestly, I don't even know much about the stroke stuff, so like in terms of how it's going to visually appear, that'll be interesting. Let's take a look at what Claude's done so far. Interesting. It's all in one file, which is interesting. Okay. Okay, so annotation for stroke underscore new would be stroke dot new. Okay, let's go ahead and build Blender with those changes, and let's see if it works. Okay, didn't work. Go ahead and run make J16 in the Blender Git directory and fix the problems. Okay, we'll have Claude fix those first draft of problems. Mem callec n. This might be from the C. I'm not familiar. C++. Okay, cool. Mem callec n. Blender features its own memory allocation library, and which is a thin wrap around an underlying allocator. Depending on the platform and type of build, this allocator can be the gemlock library, 1TB allocator, the default system. Now that's interesting. Okay, cool. So let's see. Okay, this is C-style allocation. Okay. Let me refresh myself on malloc versus callec. The different initialization. Malloc allocates a single block of memory. Well, allocates a memory for an array of elements. Initializes all bytes to 0 and takes 2 arguments, 1 element. So it's more of an array of elements. Okay. Okay, malloc actually contains garbage values. Pointer equals, okay. Takes 2 arguments. Number of elements and the size of each element slower. When you need the memory to be initialized to 0, such as for array structures, when 0 is a requirement. Calloc component is small degree security is buffer overflows. Okay, cool. That is fine. Out of curiosity, how many other things are allocated that way? This is the only thing allocated that way. That weirds me out a little bit. Then Claude needed some direction. What I want to see is how you usually create this gbt stroke dot stroke. It's not the first time. Do static cast. Let's go ahead and review this again. Okay. These cases, they're casting, they're not necessarily adding a new one. So that's the interesting part. Yeah, I think this is the only part of the code base that we're really creating a new one from scratch. Let me see if I can do a grep for bgpt stroke. It appears about 100 times. Let me do an rgrep. So bgpt stroke. Yep. Source. Cool. This is mine. Almost all other examples are just a casting of something that previously existed. Oh, here, look, you got a mem calloc. There you go. Okay, so that's how you allocate for a new stroke. And compare what we did here. Are any annotations? Mem calloc GPD stroke. Okay, cool. This is how the rest of the code instantiates this as well, so I don't think it's a big deal. Okay. So let's go down. What else Claude did here? Okay, so it creates the new stroke, initializes it with default settings, which I'm curious how often when it's instantiating the stuff, it sets these default settings, if that's to be expected or not. BLI add tail, and then we take the frame strokes. Okay, so we've got the frame. We take it and we add the strokes to that. Makes perfect sense. And then WM main add notifier G pencil. I'm curious, what is WM main add notifier? Okay, Claude fixed it, is done with its next round of changes. Let's see what changes have been made here. It's still on the same file, includes the BLI math vector, includes stroke new, stroke remove, stroke point add, mostly looks clean. We're gonna have to review it once it all works, but it doesn't look too bad right now. Cool. So let's go to scripts. Oh, hold on. We're gonna have to add a grease pencil. Add a grease pencil object to the scene blank. Create an empty grease pencil object. Okay, cool. Let's open source Blender get. Okay, cool. Create or get annotation data for the current scene. Okay, so it ran, but it didn't give me any feedback. Yeah, it should be printing stuff out, so I don't know why it's not giving me any feedback. Sorry, that wasn't centered. Okay, so what we have here is Blender, and what we need to do is we have the script that should be testing that the features work, and that should be good. But when I hit play, oh wait, hold on. Scene object I have in terminal, it's actually saying something. Scene object has no attribute grease pencil. Okay, scene has no object grease pencil.
Clear heart, apart from
Grease. Okay, maybe I just change this name to Grease Pencil. Delete. Grease Pencil. Run all tests. It's complaining about a terminate triple quoted string literal in 275. I thought this was normal. I thought this is acceptable Python. Let me ask Claude about this. Pretty sure I renamed it, but maybe there is, maybe it needs something else. I am getting error. I feel like Grease Pencil was renamed here, but maybe it's looking for something else. Look up Blender Scene Grease Pencil. Blender Scene Grease Pencil. So Blender Scene Grease Pencil API. Okay, it wants me to load it again. Delete. Let's do open source Blender get. Hit play. think it did not work. Cool. So it's seeing annotation, expected annotation type, not grease pencil. So it looks like we're still getting some type errors. And that the Claude is still getting type errors. Grease pencils increase a new graceful type, not the legacy annotation type. We need to check out if annotation data already exists or access it differently. Let me check the test script. Let's see if I can find an official Blender tutorial on this. Blender, Python, grease pencil, API grease pencil example. Cool. Claude thinks it now works, so I'll give it a shot. Let's delete. Let's open. Source. Blender. Blender get. Test animation. Okay. Let's try this again. Same thing. We're still running into issues. Okay. While Claude thinks of that, let's review the code it wrote. I think this part looks mostly fine. We got to figure out if this is the right way to default code or set default settings for stroke. This is a static cast as we would expect. If BLI find index frame stroke does not equal 1, stroke not found in annotation data. Okay, that's fair. And it returns early. So what it does it do? It removes the link, the pencil, G pencil free stroke, BKE G pencil free stroke. Oh, it removes the link and then it frees the stroke. Interesting. Okay, makes sense. And then the stroke pointer it invalidates, and then it sends a notification. Nothing too controversial here. Let me add here. Oops. Should I be setting defaults this way? Okay. So that one looks fine. Okay, I might need to in the 3D viewport also. Okay, let's see. View annotations in Blender. Okay, annotations is enabled, so we should be fine there. Okay. Okay, cool. So go to 3D viewport, press D, and draw a quick stroke. Cool, let's try that out. You see. Okay, cool. So it wants me to create an annotation in Blender first. So create annotation in Blender. Select annotation tool in the left side toolbar and draw directly into the viewport. Okay, annotate. There we go. Cool. Let's go ahead and delete this and let's try the script again. Okay, I don't think it worked. Okay, we actually got a better error this time. Annotation stroke point has no object attribute pressure. So look, this time we ran the script, it got past test 1, test 2. So we're actually getting somewhere. Let's try this out. Okay. Cool. So getting somewhere. The API's working strokes and points are being created and removed successfully. The only issue is that we need to expose the pressure and strength properties for annotation stroke point. Interesting. So you have to specifically make them available from the C++ code according to Claude. So we'll review that later. That should take quite a while to build. I wonder why that is. Let me see, the Control R to show thinking. You see the kind of changes that's been made. It's interesting that it just has a function called only annotation strokes API. I'm guessing that's just the general API for this. Okay, we need to run Blender again. Let's go ahead and close. I'm gonna rebuild real quick. Okay. Nothing to. Okay. Let's do an annotation just to set this up. Then we're going to go ahead and get back to our script, and hopefully that works. Source, Blender, Blender Git, and then play. Cool. Wow, it looks like it actually worked. Creating a spiral of 50 points. The only thing is, I don't know if I actually see where it did all that work. And we have annotations available, so. I think we may want to remove the remove stroke stuff because I want to see the results here. Man, Blender just really likes to split into different pieces. Come on. Blender reset toolbars. Settings, load UI. I'm not going to worry about this for now. This surprised, obviously it might trackpad on Mac or on Linux is not great either. It doesn't really help. Current file. Let's see, I'm gonna close this. Close area. Cool. Let's see. Close area. Let's see. Dang. I'm just making things worse. Alright, I'm gonna create a whole new project in Blender because I keep destroying my environment. Surprisingly easy to do. Okay. Cancel. Okay, so let's do an annotation. Cool. Now let's go ahead and do a script to open my script up. Blender Git. Cool. Okay, let's not let it remove the operations at the very end, because then it doesn't actually seem like it does. Let's hit play. Hold on. Okay, hold on. What's this over here? I think it deletes my original annotation every time I do this, which is not what it should be doing, right? It just seems to be deleting everything. I don't actually see it creating anything. See if I just keep running it without trying to create anything new. See if that does anything. I'm wondering if this is C++ code. This isn't correct. Let me see what happens if I run without an annotation, if it still needs that. Okay, so let's go ahead and load this up again. Okay, no annotation. Okay, cool. So it does need an annotation to get started. Okay, let's try again. And what this might be related to is where we're actually creating these things, right? For instance, if stroke points, it's a null pointer, triangle is null pointer, edit curve. What we might want to do is see how this looked in the previous version of Blender, right? So since Blender 4.3, we might need to find Blender 4.2 and kind of go from there. Okay, Blender Git. And go back to 4.2 when this stuff still existed. Okay, this is the last 4.2 repo. Okay, let's see now. Let me see, stroke underscore new. RNA annotation, stroke, new. Okay. So it would appear the code for the original annotation from buffer is way more involved than the stuff that we came up with Claude. But I gotta figure out why it's so much more involved. One thing, this is creating it from a buffer, which is a little bit different than what we were doing. This doesn't look wrong still to me. This one doesn't look wrong. Stroke point add. See if reading about Blender annotations will make any of this more obvious. Yeah, just add notes. Let's go ahead and see if Claude knows why it might not be visible. From look at the code, the things seem too obvious to me. The script runs successfully, but the annotations seem stuck on the bottom right of the screen, and I can't seem to view them. No, we should also just give us to see how this works, you know, as is, like. Yeah, see, this one looks like it's fixed in the bottom left, but this one is like it's in a 3D space. What's more is, let's see how I can add more stuff to this. Use nodes. Let me see the annotations panel. Sidebar view annotations. Sidebar view annotations panel. Okay, we're gonna try, Claude says let's try the script with bigger annotations. So let's try that real quick. Okay, see, it actually does work. Interestingly enough though, it seems like it's pegged on the screen and it's not necessarily in space, you know what I mean? Like, if I did this, it's part of the space, but this isn't. Let me ask why that might be. When I use the annotation panel normally, the annotation is like a 3D object that rotates. When I use our API, it is static, like it is static and does not rotate with the viewport. Why is that? Sidebar view annotations panel. See Blender sidebar panel. Oh, I think I get it. Right? No, this still rotates. Oh, see? Look. Okay. That makes sense. So I think we have something that works now, and I think we need to do a separate stream where we discuss why it works and kind of see how it compares with us using the normal annotation tool right here. Okay, we're gonna try the latest version where now the strokes will actually rotate. Not necessarily it's a good thing, but it's kind of compares to what we saw earlier. Okay. Let's go to script. Let's open up our script. Go ahead, hit play. Okay, we do see the strokes it was making now. Pretty cool, right? So that is a good step in the right direction. I think we now need to just call it for tonight, but I think tomorrow we're going to have to review the code Claude did, compare it to the previous code. For instance, we have some code here from the previous version, and we'll want to go line by line to really understand what's Claude doing, make sure that this API matches the rest of the code looks like. But yeah, I guess we vibe coded our way this far, but now the last part's going to have to be some polish and understanding what the code is doing, and then setting the patch in once we know it's high quality. But as you can see here, we have a script that went ahead and drew a spiral using our annotations API that we just coded with Claude. And Claude also made us this Python script that we could test it with. And we'll submit this with the patch as well. I think now we just want to clean up that code and make sure it's matches all the other code. I'm also curious about if there's anything else we want to do with the annotation API. Maybe we'll have the maintainers let us know what we're supposed to do. But for instance, do we want to place this on the surface? Do we want to place this on view? You know, that's different than that in terms of this is static, this isn't. So I think that's what we really got to figure out. So yeah, we'll do that tomorrow, but I think we made pretty good progress today. So it's really just cleaning up and figuring out a little bit more about how Blender works. But overall, I mean, I think given that I'm not a C++ expert or Blender expert, not a C++ expert, I'm new to Blender, new to the code base, I think, using LLM, we were able to get to a working spot pretty quick. And now the next part, which I think is be a little bit more interesting, is just polish, understand what the code is doing compared to other parts of the code, compared to the previous ways the API was around before. And I think that stream will be a lot more informative than just asking Claude to set up the initial first stages. But, I think software development is just like that now, where you are going to, especially when you're going to new code bases and doing new tasks you haven't done before in languages you're not familiar with, you're going to do first draft with Claude and then polish it using, just the normal senior engineer skill set of looking at other parts of the code, determining it matches up, and then, a little bit of that product skill set of really seeing how it works on the UI and trying to map that to the API. So that'll be tomorrow, and I think tomorrow's the last day I'll be streaming this week. If I get to it tomorrow, I might not be able to. And then we'll pick up next week. Given that we've made progress on this, I should probably actually post that I have worked on this so nobody else grabs it. I have a work. I managed to get an alpha of this working on my computer tonight. I managed to get an alpha of this working on my computer tonight. I will spend the next week or so polishing it into a PR. Cool. Awesome. So now we have let the maintainers know that we got an alpha that's working, and then we just need to make sure that this is in a good spot for contributing. Now, before we log off, I want to do one last kind of this check of what Claude did. Okay, so Claude did everything. Okay, I mean, honestly, the code looks pretty straightforward. It's not too hard. I mean, you can see some mistakes it made, like I think RNA should be capitalized here, like the rest of the code base, but I think we should be fine there. You know, we did make a compile commands JSON file, which is a file LSP servers use in order to basically work. Let me see if I can maybe send this over to my Blender Git to see if that would work, right? So, okay, cool. So by copying the compile commands JSON, which is a file I created in the build Linux directory where we created the Linux artifact for this, I was able to go ahead and create that file in the build directory and then copy it to the source directory. Blender has a weird setup where the build directory and source directory are separate. Not sure why they do that. But that also means if you want to create a compile commands JSON, a file needed by a C++ LSP server in order to function, you know, eglot and Emacs, then you have to go to that build directory and run some commands and create it. I was able to copy it over, and now we actually have LSP server working. So that'll make tomorrow easier as we review this and kind of compare it to the rest of the code base to make sure we're kind of up to snuff on the code quality part. Cool. Awesome. All right. Overall, by the way, I thought this album was pretty cool. I guess we're going through the early mixes of some of the tracks now that they kind of put at the end. So I think this is the first album we actually got completely through. I think this is also the first time major crash hasn't happened, which is kind of interesting given that we're running like Blender and we're actually doing like really complicated stuff now. So the fact that we were able to kind of work on something way more complicated on a GPU and CPU level and not have it crash, I think shows things are stable. I also did update to the latest version of Nick Stable to GNOME 49 as well. So maybe I was just on a weird unstable commit that had some crappy bugs in it. So either the latest Linux kernel or GNOME 49 or something kind of worked out for me. So that's good. So I'm glad things are stable again, and I'm looking forward to bringing this PR across the finish line and kind of giving it a nice level of polish. You know, the stuff that I think LLMs are still a little bit bad at. All right, that's it. Thank you, everyone.